I always show up super early. And so I saw Vince, and he was walking down the ramp, and nobody was in there. It was just him and like 7, 8 other people behind him. They were all walking down the ramp, and then Vince looked up, and it was like this light bulb that was like faced the other direction. And he looked up, and he was like, "Hey," he tapped the guy that was behind him. I forgot who it was. Tapped the guy behind him, said, "Hey, fix." I'm like, "There's 1,000 lights in there." I'm like,
micromanager.
yeah, and I was like, "What?" I said, first of all, how do you even see it in the first place? But to be that involved, and so I started spending some time with him, and he's next level when it comes to a lot of that. And I actually learned a lot from Vince McMahon being around him, because it was nothing that he didn't do. Nothing he didn't have his hands on.
He wouldn't ask you to do anything that he wouldn't do himself.
He did everything right. He had his hands on every single thing that moved. And he basically told me, like, that's what you have to do to have that type of success. And from that point on, that's what I did. Nothing happened around me that I wouldn't do.
Oh my God. Well, there was I think Rob Gronkowski was supposed to host WrestleMania the year of the pandemic, right? And Vince wanted him to jump back first off of like a catapult that was like 20 feet high. And Rob's like, "I don't know if I'm going to do that." And Vince is like, "No, it's easy. I'll show you." So 75-year-old Vince McMahon goes up to the catapult, does it without even hesitating, and falls straight back on the padding that they had for him down there. And as soon as he hits it, he goes, "See, Rob? Easy. Piece of cake. You do it." And Rob's like, "I still don't want to do it."
That dude, honestly, that was him. And I spent a good amount of time around him, but I think that just me being around that and having the opportunity to see that, because from the outside, you're like, okay, it's Vince McMahon, who grew this whole entertainment business. I mean, he is wrestling. He grew everything that was going on from where wrestling was super regional, super local back in the day, to a big conglomerate. You would think that he didn't have his hands in everything like he did.
That's right.
And I couldn't have been more. He had his hands in everything. And he told me, he said, if you want to be great in this business and be successful, this is what you got to do. And from that point on, I said, okay, that's what I'm doing.
How much of that do you take away from starting, obviously, Extreme Fighting when it comes to Lights Out? Because Vince McMahon is a prime example of someone who's built this global empire conglomerate. What's
conglomerate?
Thank you. That's why you're here.
It's an underrated word, by the way, conglomerate.
I know, I'm awful, dude. I don't know why I do this. But he had to negotiate, deal with, and just adapt to all of these different egos, all of these different personalities. Look at Brock Lesnar. Not an easy guy to deal with, I've heard from behind the scenes.
Yeah.
All of these people, like today, you got Logan Paul coming in. It's like, that guy's got an ego in some sorts. He's there to learn a lot, but like Shawn Michaels, The Undertaker, John Cena, Dwayne Johnson. Like, these are, I know, the fighters starting out building their brands with you guys, not quite as big, but you're dealing with egos too. You're dealing with contracts. You're dealing with Fubo TV. You're dealing with all of these sponsorships, marketing. Like, there's so much of it that the average person wouldn't be able to really articulate and understand. Like, oh, wow, there's so much more that goes into this business besides that. How much of that from Vince did you take away? To put aside, obviously, your playing career and your coaching staff and being with all of those guys that you played with, because Vince is someone who's just on a different level when it comes to leadership.
Yeah, and the reason why I took a lot from being around him and working with the WWE and just being around in general, because I got just a tremendous amount of respect for anybody that get that big, that are first ones to do it.